Hey all, this is David Ducker coming back at you, and today I'm going to be talking about setting the expectations for your game. This is very important when you're first starting the campaign, any campaign, be it a long-term or just a one-shot or a four-part mini campaign or an eight-part whatever. It's less important than one-shots, I suppose, because they are generally less important. But it is still important in any type of game that you run. Before you start it, set the expectation so that both yourself and the players are all on the same page about what you're going to be doing together as a team. So communication is key here. And when you're bringing in a new player, this is equally important to make sure when they show up, they're showing up to join this team. You don't want one guy showing up in hockey pads, one guy showing up in American football gear, and then one guy's wearing an amateur wrestling singlet because they think they're playing. They all think they're playing different games. When you said, "Let's go sport, let's sport some sports," and then they all show up with their favorite sports already, you're gonna have problems deciding on the rule set and the tone and the pace of the game. So it's the same thing when you're starting that campaign, when you're bringing that player in. Set the expectation. So if I'm sitting down before the game, I say to everybody, okay, so we're going to be doing a Game of Thrones style game set in Greco-Roman Empire, for example. So I'm going to lay down the ground rules, which are the hard and fast, like house rules and system rules. So the races will be like Minotaur, Satyr, Centaur, Gorgon, Cyclops, and Human. I might be forgetting someone in there, but that's fine. So we'll get those races. No other races. We're not worrying about elves and dwarfs. They're from Norse mythology. Set them to the side for now. So now we're on the same understanding for the rules. And then of course I'll lay, okay, clerics, pick out of the classical Olympic pantheon. So Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, Athena, Ares, Demeter, all those great gods. That's what you get to pick. And then lay down the rules for your wizards as well. I don't know how you want to incorporate wizards. Perhaps they draw their power from Hecate. And maybe you'll keep all of the 8 Pathfinder schools, or maybe you will plug in 4 elemental schools, or whatever you want to do with that. Make sure they're on the same page mechanically. But also, all the tone. So say, okay, if it's Game of Thrones style, what's important is politicking. What's important is negotiation. You know, what's important is manipulation. So you really want to focus on these aspects in play style, and also to help them build their character, build them in a mechanical as well as a literary sense. You know, write their backstory, write their goals, come up with their personality. And you could say, okay, and there will be some degree of personal combat, but we're also going to mass combat. So put some knowledge tactics down there, because that will come in handy. You know, and set the example that you're not going to be tracking every gold piece. You're a patrician house as a group. This is your unified theme. Everyone build a member of this patrician house, and you have a seat in the Senate, and maybe you even have a legion to command. So you really want to set those expectations so everybody knows what's going on, so they're all on the same page. They all show up looking like a team, playing the same sport, playing the same game, and then that game can progress very quickly to be just excellent. Because I've had games before where, you know, one guy showed up. Let's use. I'm trying not to pick on Aaron, because I always pick on Aaron. Let's pick on my buddy Dr. Paul. So Dr. Paul's running a game, Star Wars. So again, it's such a broad setting. I asked him for some more guidance. I'm like, okay, well, Star Wars, but should I be like an Imperial naval captain, or should I come in with a smuggler, or should I come in as a anything in between there? Am I tracking every single credit as a smuggler because I'm poor, or am I the captain and I just requisition supplies and I don't have to worry about money? Like in our Game of Thrones patrician style house, you don't have to worry about money. We might have some abstract measure of accounting. This is how much cash we have as a patrician house, but we don't have to worry about every single gold piece, every denarii and drachma, all of that. It's not necessary. So I came into Dr. Paul's game, I asked him, and he's just, whatever you want, he says. And I'm like, well, I want a million things. I can easily accommodate you. I'm sure whatever you want, I can also get with. He's like, oh, no, just whatever you want. So he gives me no guidance. So he hasn't set the expectations. I know we're not going to be on the same page because he doesn't want to know what page I'm on. So I make a Trandoshan priest of the scorekeeper. I'm trying to remember what the scorekeeper's name was. Jagwatha as the scorekeeper, the goddess of the Trandoshan people. So I'm planning for this whole political angle where I'm going to be a prophet of Jagwatha. I'm going to raise up my religion, found a religious colony, so I'm looking for like this big time player. Like I'm going to have cash, I'm going to have followers, I'm going to have ships. I want to get my own colony, and I'm going to have to deal with the Empire as their friend, not as a member of the rebellion, because I want to establish a legitimate character. So I've made this really in-depth character with all these goals, and I had a lot of backstory for him as well, and detail about how his sect of Jagwatha was different from the regular mainstream sect of the scorekeeper, right? So I made a great character for a certain style of game, but when I showed up to the game, everyone else had made dirty smugglers and like bounty hunters. And my character just stood out like a sore thumb because we weren't on the same page. So I'm trying to go in and like, oh yes, I have this fleet of ships and all of these followers, and my story is going to be one of high level politicking. And they're down there and they're like, oh yeah, well I have $10 and a gun, and my story is going to be one of just scraping by, Firefly style. And just making it from job to job and living by the skin of my teeth. And that's fine. I could have made a character like that if I'd known that was what we were doing. But I was told to do what I wanted to do. So I picked my best concept for Star Wars, the grade A concept with the most role-playing depth and the most storyline depth that I could think of, that I was interested in. But I didn't fit in to the rest of the group and the rest of the party. My character was actually a pacifist. I didn't want to fight anyone. I didn't have a gun. I had a walking staff, an intricately carved walking staff. They all had like body armor and guns, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Let's go do some politicking. And of course, no one was taking us seriously. My character just got more and more frustrated because I'm thinking I've got all this wealth and power to draw on. The GM's like, oh no, you don't actually have that. I'm like, well, that's my character concept though. And I sent it to him a week ago, all in writing on email, so he could be prepared for it and correct me, but he didn't read it. So there were multiple problems here, but the main problem was we weren't on the same page. I was trying to do Game of Thrones in space in Star Wars, and he wanted to do Firefly. And I love Firefly, and I can do Firefly all day long. But I have to know that's what I'm coming into. So when you're the GM, identify to your players, is it sword and sandal? Is it low fantasy? Is it high fantasy? Is it urban fantasy? If so, Is it closer to superheroes or closer to horror? Call of Cthulhu. You know, are we doing space opera or planetary romance? Are we doing Firefly, Star Wars, Star Trek? What's the campaign mode going to be? So give this to your players. If you're a player, ask this of your GM. Someone at the table has to clarify this stuff. So if the GM's not willing to take the initiative, as a player, you take that initiative. I've done that before. I've done that lots of times where I came in and as a player, I just steamrolled it and I was like, okay, well the GM's not helping us. So this is what I'm going to make. And you should all make something that can fit in with my character concept. So I'll seize the initiative if nobody else will. That's just my personality type. So be that guy at your table because then we're all on the same page, right? You don't want everybody on a different page because they get mad at each other. You know, I've had other games where it seemed like we were on the same page, but we weren't. So, you know, 4 or 8 sessions in, you start to be like, what are you doing? And the other guy looks at you and he's like, what are you doing? And you, this whole disconnect, because you thought it was high fantasy and he thought it was low fantasy. When you look for a magic item shop, he's confused. And when he, you know, started marveling over this magical sword, you're confused. So get on the same page. Have communication with each other. Talk about this. You know, you don't have to, as a GM, just say what it is. As a committee, as a group, you can decide what it is. But however you make the decision, everyone has to know about it. So I think that's all I got to say about that. Communication is key. Set the expectation so you can start off on the right foot. Make the first session just as good as the last session. I'm going to be signing out now, and everybody have a good day on YouTube.